I will be gentle with myself, and I will hold myself like a newborn baby child. Good morning and welcome to the Monterey Center for Spiritual Living. We're continuing with our theme for the month of May, which is emotions. And today we're looking at the topic of looking anger in the eye. Our readings have focused on some aspect of anger, and I'm going to expand on the quote by Dr. Robert Masters that was read earlier. And I'm going to add to that, Robert Augustus Masters is a spiritual psychotherapist. And in the book, Spiritual Bypassing, he defines anger as the primary emotional state that functions to uphold our boundaries. That primary emotional state that functions to uphold our boundaries. When we feel anger, it's an indication that something is wrong. A boundary has been crossed or a need is not being met. It is not always just about us. Anger is the appropriate response to oppression. A little bit of an overview of today's topic. We often get the message that anger is what our spiritual practices should help us to get rid of, that we should be able to transform it into pure, sweet compassion. What if seeing anger rather than an abhorrent emotional state, we consider the spiritual meaning of anger? What if we viewed anger not as the enemy, but as a dear friend? Louise Hay says this: rather than trying to fix the problem, fix your thinking about the problem, and that will make it go away. It all begins in mind. Our thoughts have a dramatic impact on our lives and in our response to certain situations. We all get angry at something. Let's acknowledge it. We're living in this human experience. It is part of the human experience. And whether that anger is outwardly expressed or if it's inwardly channeled or held inside as inner rage, it is smart to have tools that allow us to take that time out before we do or say something that we'll later regret. I had a little personal experience during the week that caused me to momentarily step out of principle in mind. I was able to control my tongue, and I was very proud of that. But I was on a business call with someone and was asking for information. And the individual does not want to provide the information or is engaging in various types of delaying tactics. And so as part of the delay tactic, the person began to engage in flattery because this was our first time having this conversation. And I recognized that the flattery being used was a form of manipulation. And it was also a diversion tactic to try and get me to shift my focus from continuing to request the information that is needed. Within the flattery and the manipulation, there was also the veiled threat of, well, if you don't do this, then I'm prepared to fight back. And I have my lawyer standing by. And then the day following, I received a couple of telephone messages which I chose not to respond to because my boundaries were being invaded. My personal space was being violated for the convenience of the individual. And I chose not to go down that rabbit hole. And in that process, I was aware that I was momentarily stepping out of principle because the mental defense that I was preparing certainly was not grounded in spiritual ideology in any way. It's just being honest with myself. And so reflecting on what Louise Hay says is to, rather than focus on fixing the problem, to fix my thinking, creating a change in perspective following that phone call. And it was a relatively short period of time, maybe a half an hour or less. I was engaged in another conversation that was very uplifting. There was laughter, and it just melted away all of that baggage from that earlier call. So I was rather proud of myself that I was able to make that shift and also to be aware of that shift. Shifting to laughter and joy and celebration just brought my whole mood and my entire being back up. I have a story to share about looking anger in the eye. At the beginning of the semester, a college professor addresses his class of 300 students by saying, there are 300 of you in here and there's only one of me. I will not allow you to waste my time. If you are late to class, I will count you as absent for the day. If you hand in an assignment late, it will not count towards your final grade. If you're even 1 minute late for a test, do not bother to hand it in. I will not grade it. So it sounds maybe harsh, but the professor was establishing clear boundaries for managing a class of 300 students. Throughout the semester, the professor kept good on the promise by throwing out late papers and marking students who arrived late as absent. The day before the final exam, the professor reminded the students to be on time for their test or else they would not be graded. So the next day, all of the students arrive on time for the exam except one. But there's always the one that's going to test the waters. Always that one. 20 minutes into the test, this student casually walks into the classroom, goes up to the front of the room, picks up a test, goes over to their desk and sits down and proceeds to fill in the answers. The professor watches this, and at first with annoyance, and then with an air of smug satisfaction at the life lesson about to be delivered. Just wait until the student turns this in and finds out that I won't grade it. The professor is saying to theirself. As the exam period winds down and students begin to hand in their papers, all of them except the late student. So the late student continues to fill in the answers, and the professor starts his anger. The professor's anger is really growing at this point. So even 10 minutes in, after all of the other students had handed in their exams, this late student is still not complete. And the professor is just ranting and fuming inside of himself and saying to theirself, how dare you come in late, staying past the bell that has just rung? Just who do you think you are? And so this is what the professor said to the student. Who do you think you are? Just coming in and all of that what he's done. And so the student rather puzzlingly looks at the professor and says, do you know who I am? No, the professor scoffs, I certainly do not. Oh, thank goodness, says the student. Then shoves their test into the middle of the stack and dashes out of the room. The student definitely devised a way to look anger in the eye and to demonstrate a shift in perspective. And so exploring this topic of looking anger in the eye, I would like to offer some science of mind perspectives. And the perspective that I'm going to offer this morning is for us to shift the anger. So it's going to be anger transformation that we will be looking at. In our Science of Mind textbook, Dr. Holmes writes, peace be unto thee, stranger, enter and not be afraid. There is room in my house for all. Sit rest, and refresh your soul. And so as we're looking at anger transformation, the first thing that we want to consider is finding peace in the midst of chaos. When bombarded with anger and chaos, doesn't mean that there isn't peace somewhere in the midst of it. Thich Nhat Hanh modeled treating anger with kindness by walking in a meditative consciousness throughout bomb-ridden streets and never getting hit, never getting hurt. And we too can find peace in the middle of chaos if we set our intention in consciousness. And so an easy practice that I offer is to, following an anger incident, first remember that I am, you are, we are spiritual beings living in a spiritual universe. And we turn our attention from anger to inner peace. It is an inside job that we are creating. Our word creates. As we often hear in our spiritual mind treatment, I speak my word for, or I speak the word for. Our word creates. And so when we speak the word peace, commanding the winds of the internal storm to part, we become fully aware that we are protected right in the middle of peace, at the eye of the center of the storm. And just speaking our word of peace shifts our external and internal experience of feelings towards peace. This is one way of transforming anger. Another way we can transform our anger is to let the waves rush out into the sea. Turbulence and tumultuous activity based on anger can seize control of a situation, sending the anger out like waves crashing at the sea. Again, remembering our spiritual nature, we focus our attention on the waters and we calm those things that are around us. Another easy practice for us to have is our spiritual toolkits. Remember our spiritual tools of meditation, centered breathing, reciting a mantra, or offering a prayer that helps us to stay grounded. Other things like drinking a soothing cup of tea or walking with our feet in the bare grass, or taking a walk in nature, anything that helps us to feel grounded and blow off that steam. And so in releasing the anger, we're setting a conscious intention to take command of our emotions and our spiritual, mental, and physical practices that help us to refocus and to send this anger out and away. We learn to be at peace. We learn to trust and believe in God and the good of life. Another way to transform anger is to turn the muddy waters into clear. When our inner state starts out clear, but due to anger is turned muddy, we get hot and flustered. Our hearts start racing. We don't think or speak clearly. We get anxious. We may become offensive and maybe even confrontational. Before I really grounded myself in this practice of spiritual principles, I would say to those that were close to me, if you ever observe me engaged in anyone and you see my fists start to clench, you have my permission, and I am commanding you to physically remove me by any means necessary from that situation, because I have no intention of going to jail. So it's becoming aware of those triggers and engaging the tools. I was not fully aware of all of the spiritual practices that were aware. I was not fully aware of all of the spiritual practices that were available to me at that time. So using our spiritual tools help us to pour clear water on our inner state, allowing the muddy water to turn clear. And for those of us who have taken the foundations class, which is our entry-level class into the teachings of science of mind, we may remember the experiment where there's a full glass of water And then there's a glass that has mud and dirt in it, and it is partially full. You look at the two glasses side by side, the one that is clear represents that sign of peace within. And the one that is muddy represents the turbulence and the tumultuous experiences that are going on in our lives. And so in this experiment, we are encouraged to place the muddy glass of water under a fountain. We would not do it now in our drought conditions, but you place the dirty glass or the muddy glass under a fountain, and just even one drop of water in there over a period of time clears out all the muddy yuck and gunk, and we're left with a clear glass of water. And this is how it is when we look anger in the eye for the purpose of transforming it and making it work for us rather than working against us. It is that peace that overflows as clear water and eliminates the signs of anger, muddiness, and darkness. And this leads to our call to action this morning. Our spiritual practices help us to slow down and get a clear and smooth sense of being. We calm the turbulence by focusing on the eye of the storm where there is always peace. There's always peace at the eye of the storm. I'm reminded of someone shared about the ocean in the signs of turbulence, when the waves are crashing and it seems like there's chaos all around. Science has shown that if you place a camera over the very eye of all of that storm and all of that turbulence, there is perfect peace, there's perfect stillness. This is how we transform internally that stuff that is going on around us. We become aware of the very essence and nature of who we are as spiritual beings. And from this calm place, resolution can be achieved for all. And we experience tranquility and a sense of serenity instead of hostility, agitation, and frustration. So we create peace in the midst of chaos by becoming fully aware that we are protected in that place of peace at the center of the storm. We let the anger waves crash out to the sea, remembering our spiritual nature as we focus on the calm waters around us. And we allow the muddy waters to turn clear, remembering that peace overflows as the clear water eliminates any signs of anger, muddiness, or murkiness. And our practical application for the week, which will be in our Zoom and also in the comments section on our Facebook page and on our YouTube channel. Think of a personal situation where you have experienced anger. And then using one of the spiritual practices or principles, such as oneness, love, affirmations, or spiritual mind treatment, imagine how the situation could have changed. What would be a different outcome? And then journal your response and just be mindful and aware of how it has changed or what may have changed. Now let us say together our affirmation for the week. At the center of anger is peace and calm. At the center of anger is peace and calm. Let us pray together. Recognizing that the Spirit, the eternal essence, this keeper of my soul and my entire being is absolutely all that there is. And so in recognition of this keeper of my soul, I know that as an individualized expression of this energy, of this essence, I am always at choice, and that I can transform whatever the situation is from one of chaos or seeming discord into one of peace and accord. Knowing this truth for myself, I embrace it and accept it and affirm it for each one, for I know that each one is an individualized expression of this essence, imbued and embodied with the same qualities that are not unique to me, and yet unique to each individual, because each one approaches the spiritual essence from a place of understanding with their own heart space, recognizing that only good comes out of all of our experiences. When we release and let go of an attachment to the outcome and be in that place of receptivity and open to personal transformation in whatever way it takes form and shape. And so blessing this time together, giving thanks for this message that has been delivered, recognizing that whatever the takeaway is for each individual, their experience of that takeaway is a part that brings about transformation in their individual lives. And so as we walk this journey of discovery together, as we welcome ourselves back home to our experience of being at one with all that there is, I bless all of the past, all of the traditions. I bless people that are gathering, honoring those paths and those traditions, recognizing that it is all good, it is all God. Blessing each one that is experiencing a transformational experience in their own lives. However that may be showing up, knowing that the comforting presence of the internal love, we remember to hold ourselves, to be gentle with ourselves, to hold ourselves as if we were holding a newborn baby. And it's out of this place of love and compassion that everything heals and reveals in a way that expresses itself for the highest and best of all that are concerned. And so in gratitude for this and so much more, I release this word now back into that law, which always says yes, allowing it to be so. And if any of this resonates with you in any way, I invite you to affirm it with me by saying, and so it is. And so it is. Thank you for being with us this morning as we continue on this journey called life. And now is our opportunity to participate in the physical flow of abundance through our tithes and offerings. And on our screen is our affirmation of abundance. Let us say this together. I recognize the presence of God within as the source of my abundance. Out of my abundance consciousness flows everything I could desire in life. With gratitude and thanksgiving, I now participate in the flow of uninterrupted abundance. This prosperous evidence is and so it is. And we have on our screen the various ways for you to contribute to the center. And again, just an expression of deep, deep gratitude for the way that you continue to support our center in all it is that we are doing, the programs that we're bringing forth, the technology, the classes that we're preparing to teach. It is through your abundance that we're able to offer these various resources. And so I just have a couple of things that I would like to share with our virtual community while we're still live. Today, following service, is our Spiritual Living Circle. So if you're viewing live, we invite you to stay for the Spiritual Living Circle. Also, we will be offering a class, another class in our certificated series, and that is the Roots of Science of Mind. And this class will begin on June 13th, and we'll go through August the 14th. I think I have the ending date correct. The class will meet on Mondays from 11 to 1:30 it will be a daytime class from 11 a.m. to 1:30 in the afternoon. In our newsletter are more details about the class. And so we invite you, those of you who may be interested in learning about the roots of science of mind, this would be a great opportunity to do so. And we will also be promoting the class online through our fellow centers. And it may be an opportunity for us to connect with like-minded individuals from other centers in various parts of the world. So we invite you to take advantage of that. And also on next Sunday, we will have a special guest speaker, Coach Michael Taylor, and he will be sharing with us some ideas from his most recent book, What If Jesus Were a Coach? And we'll continue along the same theme of transformation, transforming our lives, recognizing how our emotions can impact our lives in various ways. And there's a brief bio, a brief bio of Michael in our newsletter. I invite you to read that and to tune in and also share with your friends and family. This will be an exciting time for us here at the Monterey Center. And so we say to our Facebook community, our virtual community, we appreciate you, we thank you, we love you, and we will see you the next time you're here.